do a little more explanation on some of the things we learned previously about swatches. So I'd like you to start. This is what we're going to create. We're going to do what's called a linear gradient, a radial gradient. This is called a gradient mesh. And then we're also going to kind of talk a little bit using the pen tool a little today and how to make some more customized shapes. So if you guys could start off by making a new Illustrator document, and you can call it GradientDemo. All right, 8.5 by 11, kind of your typical paper size. All right, and then within there, we're going to start by just making a rectangle. All right, so on your handout, question number 1 there says, how do you enlarge an existing object in an artboard? So 6, we're just going to hold down the shift key and drag out the corner, right? So that's actually number 6 on our handout. I feel like we've been doing that for a little while. I don't know why they include that in this lesson, but I do want you to have all the information on there, right? So 6 is hold down the shift key and drag the corner of the object. All right. I do want you to have this at a specific size, so please make it 2.5 in your width and 2 for your height.
Wait, you said 2 by 2, right?
2.5 by 2. All right, so right now we have this as a solid color. If we look at the bottom of our toolbar, underneath the fill and the stroke, we have 2 other options for our color. So right now it's a solid. If we just select the one to the right of it in the middle here, we have a gradient option. All right. So we're going to want to customize this gradient and make it a little more specific. So whenever we want a palette that is not visible, where do we go to find a palette? These are all palettes, right? We don't see my gradient palette. I can open that by going to the window pull down. All right, so let's open that gradient palette. So you should have this thing up now. All right. And we're going to apply a radial gradient. So that's basically a color shift from the left to the right. Did I say radial? This is linear. All right, sorry. I'm thinking, talking, doing. This is a linear gradient. All right, so, and that's because basically it's kind of like lines. If you were to imagine that you had a whole bunch of lines placed next to each other at different colors, kind of fading, it would create that. Number 7, whatever item is selected will be assigned the gradient. That is true, right? So just by, we had our box here selected, we chose the gradient, and that applied that. So if we had, let's just kind of test that, if we had multiple items selected, we can, change your fill or change back to the gradient that way too. So that kind of proves that thing there as well.
How did you get to gradient?
Window and then gradient. All right. So the gradient by default, number 9, has 2 stops. Right. These little circles on here are what's referred to as the stops. So number 9, the gradient by default has 2 color stops. Number 10 is the same answer. Each color stop will be assigned a different color. If they were the same color, would we have a gradient? No, it would just be a solid then, right? So, and you can have more than 2 stops. All right, so just by dragging stuff over from your swatches, you can actually change as you. Oh, I don't have anything selected. That's why nothing happened. So if I just make another stop and I can put a green in here. So now we have it going from yellow to green to red. This point here, this little diamond, is called a split point. All right, so we can split that color and adjust where that is splitting and make it so that it's going to be more green than yellow, right? So see how my color is fading a little more or less? All right, so, and we can also remove a stop just by dragging it down. All right, so we're going to be very specific here to test that you guys are following along here. So what I want to do next is on my left stop, we're going to use what's called a spot color or Pantone. All right, so in your swatch library, all right, how about you guys watch this first, because it is a little bit of a path to get there, and then we'll do it together. So to open up the Pantone colors, we're going to go to our swatch options, then go to Open Swatch Library, and say Color Books, and then Pantone Solid Coated. All right, actually I'll leave that path up there. So I went first to the swatch option. Actually, maybe if I bring it over here, maybe I can see it a little bit better. So, swatch library, color books, and then Pantone Solid Coated. All right, that's what I want everybody to open. And by doing that, it should open up another palette that just shows this, right? So we have this whole thing. Now, if you remember, or if you ever looked at a Pantone book, that's what clients may have a very specific color. So in order to print that color and have a good print preview and a proof, you want to use these.
Is it Pantone
Pantone, yes, plus solid coated. All right. So everybody good so far with opening up that library? No?
I lost the line.
All right. So again, we're going to start with the swatches palette. And then from within the swatches, we're going to click the swatch options, then go to Open Swatch Library, Color Books, and Pantone Solid Coated. You can see here there's a lot of swatch options, right? I mean, if you're doing characters and stuff like that, they have skin tones in here, back here, and all kinds, and foods, and actually I think these are more, oh no, these are colors of them. So they have some colors and things like that, all right? All right, so now, within our swatches, we're going to look, the first thing we're going to look for, and I would like you guys to have these kind of labels underneath of it, so, you know, you can type it and then copy and paste. So this swatch, we're going to go from Pantone 7743. So in our swatch library, I think I closed the wrong one. All right, so within here, we can just search for 7743. We see that it's there. I close my gradient. It's not gradient.
Disgusting green color.
It is a disgusting green, kind of. Where'd my gradient panel go? Oh, it's down here. So we're going to use the 7743 on the left. And what we do is we just drag it onto this stop, the circle. And now you can see it's applied to our picture. On the right, so it's going to go from 7743 to warm red. So if you just type in warm red, there are two of them, but they're named the same, so I don't really know what the difference is. Actually, let's see. Oh, I didn't want to do that. I bet you one is a process and like one's a spot. It's not bringing that up. I don't know. All right, I'm not going to worry about it. So we're just going to drag this to our other stop. All right. So far you should have the 2.5 by 2 box, the linear gradient going from Pantone 7743 to the warm red, and the last thing, we're going to make this split location at 75%. All right, so I bring that over, or I can type that in. Okay, the next thing we're going to work on is what's called a radial gradient. All right, I said that right, I think, this time. So we're going to start by making a 2-inch circle. I think the radial gradients look better in a circle than in a square. And for this one, what did I have? We're going to go... It's going from Pantone yellow to Pantone 185C. So if we just type in yellow, probably here.
I don't see a 185C.
All right, let's see. So we make our circle. We're going to change the gradient type to radial. I'm going to drag my swatch onto the stop. And let's see, Jake, if you're right. Oh, there is a 185C. Look at that. Just type it in if you're in that. If you're in this library. Just type in 185 like I did, and you'll see the options there.
Alright, you have to say there's a space with the C.
The yellow is Pantone yellow is all it's called. Alright, that's why I wrote this stuff down here so you could see the names. Alright, so that's what... Alright, so the last part for this gradient mesh, we're going to start by just creating a shape, and then we're going to go to Object and create Gradient Mesh. So you get a little preview here, and as you can see, it kind of divides it into columns and rows. If this was a square, they would be more straight, but since this is a star, it's a little different. So when we press OK, then we can grab our swatches and we drag it onto the different points. And check out what it does here. So instead of like being all the way across, it kind of applies it to these little quadrants, I guess you would say, and you kind of get some interesting results for that. Alright. So, I don't know, it kind of creates a little bit of depth to it too, I think. Whereas with your traditional gradients, it's a little more flat. Alright, and that's how we do that. So we make the shape, and then go to the Object menu and create Gradient Mesh. I want to talk about is kind of working with the pen tool. Actually, alright, so if we choose the Direct Selection tool, and then we click and drag, oh sweet. Too big.
Yes, sir.
Direct selection, all right, we can move this around. So you can use that to kind of change the shape of your object. And then if we press and hold the pen tool, you get this anchor point tool. That will allow us, if we click and drag, we can kind of start making this into a curved line. So if I press and hold the pen tool, which is by the default on your toolbar, go down to the anchor point tool, you can then click and drag on a point and it converts it to having, these are called handles, the lines that extend off of them. So we use them and we can make some curvature. So I'd just like you to make some kind of irregular shape here today. And what I even did was took a little screenshot because I feel like if it were me and I was trying to remember how to do this or which tool it was, it might be difficult. So this is the one that we used for that. Alright, so that will be the end of the demo here. I'll kind of leave all this stuff on screen. I would like you to add your name to it and a title. So your name, GradientDemo. Alright, save it and then JPEG it for your summary today.
You just use the snipping tool
For what?
to just take a screenshot.
You could do that too. Yep. Alright, so that shows us 3 different types of gradients and then a little bit of working and modifying with the pen tool.